You're listening to the Two Sleuth Podcast, all about the business of dentistry, hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixed full arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective.
Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited today. My friend Zach Anderson is on the program. Zach being the head of partnerships at ONEderful Finance. Zach, we'll go through and we'll talk a little bit about your background, but I just want you to introduce everyone to my listening audience. Why don't you say hello?
Hi, nice to meet everybody. Zach Anderson, work for ONEderful Finance. Like Greg said, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, so if you don't know ONEderful Finance, so I call it a waterfall. They like to call it, what do you call it? A multi-lender patient financing platform. That just sounds so formal. Ugh. I like to call it a one-stop shop. Patients, especially in my lane, the full arch lane, y'all know, right? It's all about well, maybe we can get a little here, maybe we can get a little there, and then they don't qualify for this, and then you go over here. It's a one application, and then you get all the offers from all the companies, and I really love that. And Zach, the great thing is that he spent his career in the consumer financing industry, holds a VS. He's full of VS, right? Because he went to U of A and not ASU, just saying. From the University of Arizona, he's creative at heart, spends his time outside of work, writing, recording, producing, and performing music. Whoa! Are you serious? Like, tell me about the music thing. Like, what kind of music? Are we talking like metal? Are we talking classic rock? What's that all about?
It's lifelong passion. Been doing music my whole life. Come from a family of musicians. My parents met at musical theater. My dad was the pianist, and my mom was the lead in the play. So it's been something that's been entrenched in me from a young age, from piano lessons starting at 5 to playing in marching band through high school. Picked up the guitar in college and been playing with different acts and different music groups. Tried to make it as an artist for couple of years, toured a little bit here and there, and decided that I was getting too old for that and we weren't quite good enough to keep it up. So now it's just a favorite hobby of mine, and play with a group of great musicians weekly and have gigs about every quarter. So it's a ton of fun. It's a great passion of mine.
Trumpet and trombone in middle school. What did you play?
French horn. French horn was my joke.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
So we're both brass guys. I like it.
All right, absolutely.
I liked you for a reason.
Full hot air, actually, is what it is. So
Well, I mean, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Right? You really hit the nail on the head there for sure, right? So how did you end up in dental? So a music guy, right? That's your passion. And I mean, I love that. For myself, I actually, when we transitioned when I was president of a congregation for a while, actually 2 different times, we transitioned from a very traditional choir type of music into having a band, right? And that's a huge transition for a congregation. I did lead singing for a number of years. I love music. I am so passionate about it myself, right? I don't know if it's the same level you did, which I love. So how did you transition? What is your origin story of dental? How did you find your way into dental?
it took me a while to get here. I spent the beginning of my career in consumer financing space. So I worked for Wells Fargo. I worked for essentially a division that was focused on debt consolidation loans. So we would call into folks who had credit accounts with us, and we'd get a pull of their credit and see what their situation was. And we'd find other options to help them pay off, high interest rate revolving lines of credit, move them into installment loans, help them get them into a better situation. Unfortunately, I started my career the week that Lehman Brothers went under. So that was essentially kickstarting the Great Recession. So the mortgage loans we were doing were not particularly good. My territory was 2 of the top 10 worst hit zip codes in the country. So there was not a lot of great financing options to offer to folks there. So worked in a number of different capacities with that company, decided I wanted to go be a musician for a little while. So I quit that job, and I spent about 3 months trying to play music for a living, completely ran out of money. And then it was time to go find something else. Landed in the media world. I got hired at Yelp back in 2011. So I worked in the review space and the kind of the consumer world of helping people get connected to great local businesses. Did that for about a decade, bounced around a couple different places in the restaurants and hospitality space where I had a large network. But I was ready to do something different, ready to get into a new space. Got connected to the co-founders here at ONEderful Finance through some mutual connections, and said, hey, we got this great idea. There's all this need for folks that need financing in order to pay for the dental care and treatment. It's really challenging right now with the variety of different lenders that are there. So we've built a great solution that's integrated into multiple different lenders. So patient just has to apply once and they can quickly and easily get access to the treatment that they need. So that pulled at my heartstrings right off the bat to go say, hey, something that's really going to help people. This taps into parts of my career where I think I can lend a lot of guidance, and they need somebody coming to help with their go to market and their partnerships efforts, and that's where I've landed today. So I've been about a year and a half. I've been in the industry now.
I love that. So the one thing when you said Wells Fargo, I was like, oh no, you weren't one of those people that got caught up in all of those credit cards and like those dummy credit cards just to make a bonus, were you? I'm just kidding. I just couldn't help myself. You're like, no, that wasn't me. I promise. Right. And then went out and I love to hear about people who struggle. They follow their passion, but they struggled and they're finding their way still, right? And that this opportunity came along, groups like Yelp that are really finding solutions for businesses and connecting with businesses, right? Because there's so many different opportunities to be able to connect with the business and say, I have a solution to help, right? I was in the food and beverage industry for many years. By the way, side note, I think every human being should have to work in the service industry for at least 3 months, some way, shape, or form or capacity, right? Whether it's as a teenager working fast food or in college working for some type of food and beverage service. I mean, you name it, just to know what it's like. So that when you are a consumer, doesn't matter the amount of money you have, doesn't matter amount of, status in life that you have, that you can treat other people and human beings as that. I'm just going to put it out there with you. With Wonderful, you get this opportunity a year and a half ago. I know you have a very large DSO client, right, that uses this platform. It's how I think you and I got connected kind of sort of ancillary at a very large DSO conference. And I was like, yeah, it sounds interesting. But we were waiting until you had like a top end, right, opportunity, right, third party financing into your platform because at G&A Consult, working with full arch clinics, right? That 20, 30, $50,000, you've got to have that big money ticket. If you don't have it in your platform, in that waterfall, you're of no use to me, right? I'm just saying, and if to speak very plainly. And you brought that in. So talk to me a little bit about what that has done for your platform of the multi-lender platform and how it started to change the dynamic of your business over the last year, I think is when it's actually happened, or maybe a little bit less.
Sure. Yeah. So at the onset of the organization, the focus was where can we help these dental groups or individual practices find ways to save on the merchant fee and the shared risk model that's there with most of these programs. And uh, we had a lot of integrations into these direct consumer lenders. So patient would take out the loan, they actually receive the funds, and then they would go pay the practice directly. The entire relationship would be between the patient and that lending institution. Practices would love it when those patients can get approved for that, and then they would go take that and they pay same as cash essentially for treatment, which means there's no merchant fees aligned with that. Couple things with some delays in payments that could make it a little difficult in some respects for like same day treatment, but generally speaking, really strong service from that end. Then we see this changing dynamic where the interest rate markets start to shift. Right, when interest rates go up, there's greater risk that's in place for the lending groups and these direct to consumer lenders. There's nothing tying them directly to the institutions that they ultimately where the funds are ultimately going, right? So they start to, share in that risk model and we see their approvals drop substantially. So for us, we say, we can't just rely on that network altogether. We need to start building integrations to the other areas. And for us, what we wanted to be is actually a complete solution. The idea where if you submit this one application, a practice can have accessibility to all the different levels of funding necessary, from the amounts that are there to the actual finance amounts, all the way down to what the need looks like from the actual borrower's financial situation for what they could borrow based on their risk profile for that institution. So the stacking from our end look to cover a variety of bases that are typically really important for these institutions and for the groups and the practices. So first and foremost, we have to have in the vein of full arch business and the higher price treatment amounts. You need to have premier lenders that can lend to these high levels of financing amounts on longer terms that are going to create affordability, like Proceed Finance, who we work closely with. on the deferred interest side of things. Folks want to come in if you have a great credit profile and you want to be able to pay for treatment, but you don't want to and take on the interest, and you think you can pay this off on like a 12-month period, what have you. We need a deferred interest program. So we partner closely with Alpheon Credit from that end. Beyond that, we also have, those borrowers that not necessarily are going to have that prime type of credit scenario, and they still need to be able to get accessibility to financing. So we partner closely with Healthcare Finance Direct, or HFD, as they're also commonly known, as they provide some of the best-in-class versions of the sub and deep subprime products to ensure every patient is going to have at least some sort of offer when they come in the door, which is really important for that treatment coordinator or for that front desk person or whoever it is in the practice that's having that conversation that wants to guide that patient through. Having that decline conversation really hurts and is difficult to help them capitalize on this great patient experience, the investment in marketing dollars to convert that case. If we can at least get some sort of yes from a financing scenario for them, and we do it really, really quickly, that's going to that's really going to help elevate that practice. It's going to help them deliver more case acceptance, and it's going to make us a really valuable tool for them to integrate and utilize in the practice.
Well, you've touched on something so critically important, right? It really all is all about the patient experience and giving the tools to clients that we work with, right? At GNA Consult, and helping your clients, your doctors, and the treatment coordinators and the whole office really in the patient experience to be able to help patients to move forward wherever they are, right, in their own personal journey, whether it's the patients who are really looking for that longer term loan, right? So they're trying to drive down that monthly payment for the big ticket items, right? It can be in full arch like we do. It can be in a cosmetic case. It can be fill in the blank, right? That maybe they just have a lot of work that needs to be done in general. And that's where, you talked about partnering with Proceed. Those that have, say, the cash in the bank that literally could just write the check, swipe a card, whatever the case may be, but necessarily want to hold on to that. I mean, interest rates are pretty high, so they're probably, their money's making money. So why would they want to, pay that? And certainly somebody's paying for that somewhere, right? So that's in the form of some type of merchant fee. But nonetheless, for a patient, to be able to say, I'll hold my cash for a little bit. And that's the cost of doing business for doctors, for clients, for practices, to be able to offer that. And, your partnership, as you shared with Alpheon Credit. And then for other patients who maybe they don't have the top end credit score, maybe they do have some challenges with, name it, right? Debt to income ratio, or with their credit score and all the things, but still getting them some type of financing so that with the treatment coordinators, and I know our coaches sit down and work with those treatment coordinators to talk about, let's look holistically at what this looks like. I mean, if they have a situation where they're not able to function or to chew, I mean, we know the mouth body connection. This isn't anything new, but it's becoming more and more prevalent in the common vernacular, in common, layperson's terms of what that affects overall, and to not have to be on a liquid diet or to chew on the 3 teeth that they have left or fill in the blank, right? That this type of conversation, to be able to have a compassionate conversation about a long-term solution, a fixed solution for them, and to be able to find a way together with them to be able to have some type of financing where maybe part of it is financed and part of it can be with other family members, or figuring out ways to be able to get the rest of the money without necessarily stacking loans.
Hey there, it's Greg Essenmacher, host of the Two Sleuth podcast and founder of GNA Consult. At GNA, we specialize in transforming full arch dental practices, teaching, coaching, and training teams to deliver an exceptional patient experience, from that first call to delivering final smiles. Whether you're a practice owner, a DSO executive, or a regional leader looking to expand your full arch program, boost same-store sales, or unlock the true profitability of full arch cases, we've got you covered. Ready to see how full arch can elevate your practice? Visit the show page or book a discovery call today. Let's turn your potential into results.
Right? Because sometimes that can be problematic as well, where, they might not be able to take 5,000 here, 6,000 here, and 8,000 here from 3 different lenders. And then they're at a $600, $700, $800 payment with probably pretty high interest if they have poor credit. And so it's really working within the confines of what makes sense for them. Is that what you're finding with clinics and groups and DSOs that you work with the solutions you're providing?
Absolutely. I mean, from our perspective, we want to be able to have as many possible options to let that consumer in partnership with the practice that they're working with identify the plan that's going to work best for their situation and have that optionality to make that choice. If you work independently with many of the different lenders, you're kind of stuck in this guessing game that comes into effect. And you're also the patient experience time frame. I mean, just sitting there submitting application after application after application. Here's a turn down, here's an acceptance. You feel mired in this concept of what is my choice? I can't really put it into one singular area to figure out what that looks like. So if you can work with them and understand, hey, here's where this patient actually lands from what their ability is from a financial standpoint in order to move forward with treatment, how can we work closely with them to make that get them to the right type of clinical outcomes that we're looking for long term. You know, if we're in the case where somebody does need to have, frankly, we need to do two full arches for these patients to get them to the right scenario. But their affordability really says that they can really only borrow $5,000 and they can really only afford $250 in a payment right now. What can we do with them today or in the near term to work with them to then in the long term work with them to support them? Yeah, I'll leave all the clinical discussion and the decisioning to the actual providers that are going to lead in that guidance piece of it. But if we can create those opportunities that are there so that they can partner closely with the patient, then I feel like we're doing the right stuff on our end to lead them to that great successful outcome.
Yeah, and that's really the nuts and bolts aspect of it. The other piece really is the emotional piece, right? And we talk a lot about the emotional aspect, right? That patients go through that, in the front end, and we work with clients all the time on this, that, converting the leads to consultations, right? Using the GNA method of empathy, assurance, and zeal. And then once they're in clinic, right, working through the entire process, every touch point of the patient journey, and then getting them to where they're motivated because they know that the need is there, they're comfortable with the practice, they want to say yes, and trying to help them to figure out the way to forward financially for this, and then getting that response back of decline. Oh, it's like a punch in the gut emotionally for them. Not once, but twice and three, right? Over and over and over again. And when you have that, right? I had that experience, right? So for me personally, I'll just share this, that, I have freezes on all my credit report. And, I went for a business credit card, fairly recently that, just because it made sense, my business is growing and I'm very grateful for that. And rather than remembering, okay, before you hit submit, before you make this happen, you need to put a pause on your credit freeze on all three of your. I forgot to do that. I got declined and I saw it and I was like, how dare you? My credit is amazing. Like, how dare you? Right. And then I was like, oh, well, that was kinda dumb, right? But instantly, like, that emotional reaction that I had was shock, shame, I mean, I don't know if anyone could relate. I'm sure, those regular listeners on socials will probably react or respond back to me for that, but it's true. It's such an emotional thing, and so, uh, share with the listening audience, on the pieces on that, what do you see that's coming, peek around the corner? What do you see that's coming down the pipe from your experience that you have and from what you're learning from your leadership team? And as this platform is evolving, what's coming around the corner when it comes to third party financing for patients and patient financing? I'd like to say in the full arch or in the big ticket lane, but certainly just in general, because I think that could be instructive for the listening audience as well right now.
Sure. Well, there's always exits and new entrants. I can think off the top of my head,
Same.
right? Four or five different companies in just the last couple of years that, make a big splash and then they move on to something else. The the lenders themselves are organizations. They work with capital providers that are going to go fund these loans for them to go service and manage from there. And their businesses change and shift and move as things are going to adjust in the market for them, right? So that means we're going to have new people that are coming in, and in some point, we're going to have more exits that are going to happen along the way. That's really difficult to manage, right? From, as you have like, I've got my go-to group that I work with, that these are my favorite lenders. And all of a sudden they come out and say, we're pivoting over and we're going to start, financing roofs or, moving into, the retail segment or something.
We're gonna go over to the construction space. You know what? We're gonna start to yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So when those changes happen, that can be difficult to manage. So, we are always on the outlet, on the horizon, keeping an eye out who wants to come into this space or who is dabbling into an area of this where they're, have their toe in the water and maybe they have unique lending products that are coming into this space to go service that. And you'll get a varied amount of, interest that'll come in, but I think we'll, hopefully in short order have a couple of announcements of some newer folks that are going to come through the pipeline that are joining the area that service some of these kind of specific lanes where there seems to be gaps within the current mix. All the lenders want the best possible paper, is the kind of the term they use on their end. They want the best type of borrowers for the best type of loans because they have the most predictable amount of repayment coming back for that so they can hit their margins and grow their business. That's not everybody that's out there. So finding folks that specialize in different areas of the mix are really important to have, so that we can, again, service the larger portion of the population that has a very diverse credit range for what their borrowing is. So I'd say that's one area that's particularly big. Um, the other area, I think it really ties back to patient experience and how people think about something around this. And you were touching on kind of the emotional component that comes into this. And one thing that we really focus on and our engagement is really leaning into how do we support both the practices and the patients in this financing conversation. There's probably plenty of people within the practices that you guys work with in GNA or folks that are watching this today that maybe they don't feel as confident around talking about lending products and interest rates and APRs and all these pieces that go into it. Nor should they. And from our perspective, they should be great at delivering the goals that happen within the practice and all the myriad of insane amount of task and multitasking that has to happen to keep the ship afloat and keep driving towards the goals of that organization. So we staff on two ends. Certainly, we support the practices directly on the pieces that they need to have success, but we also staff an entire team of what we call finance support associates to help be that empathetic arm and that understanding group to work directly with patients when they have questions about the types of loans that they have. Rather than going to each lender independently, we have them come to our team directly. And we primarily staff our team with moms who are looking to re-enter the industry in some capacity. And we incentivize them based on the level of empathy and accuracy in which they collaborate with them, because that's what's needed. This is an emotional piece. Your people's money in their bank accounts, what they do is an emotional component of their life in many respects. So they can get the guidance that they need to understand understand each of those scenarios and get the right types of engagement that really helps them to find the best types of option. So much so that about 30% of the loans that finance through our platform today require a level of involvement and engagement with our team directly to have that conversation to figure out what's happening. I mean, that just speaks volumes to what that need looks like into that space. And we keep a log of all the great feedback that we get from patients. So like, I'm finally getting my smile back to where I wanted it to be, or I've tried this multiple times. I've faced nothing but getting turned down, and finally I feel like I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, that's absolutely an element of that's taking place both in that conversation and the practice, and getting over that hump when we look at how can I afford to actually do this to meet this goal that I've had for a long time now.
Well, and I want to lift up something you just talked about there, which from my perspective, when we look for industry partners to be able to introduce to our clients, it really is twofold. One, it's about that which has a similar philosophy to what we have, which is being all about being of service, right? Not selling services, which I think is critically important. And then secondarily, right, or complementary to that, maybe it's not really a two, maybe it's a 1A and 1B. It's really about how do they then service, right? Once they have sold the service, if you will, right? And you talked about it because really it's about the empathy to then the end user, right? The patient, who ultimately we should all be focused on. And that's the patient experience piece that we teach, coach, and train that's so critically important, because in full arch, it is not about the what, the prosthesis, the denture that's being fixed into the patient's mouth. It's about the why, the motivation behind it. And that is all about the emotional connection, about them moving forward and choosing your practice over somebody else's. So, any industry partner that we bring forward to our clients has to align with that. And so for all the full arch clinics and for all the practices that add full arch and are doing full arch listening out there, that really should be your barometer about any of the vendors that you use. It's not transactional relationships, they're relational relationships. And that really will help establish your brand, your culture, your differentiation in the marketplace, and how you can compete with some of the larger groups. And it's what they really focus a lot of time, effort, and energy on across those platforms, right? So if you look at like the DSO networking panel that I'm going to be facilitating at the end of February, it's a big piece of it. We have representatives from all different size groups, and that is really what we're talking about is the next level experience on specifically that across the board, depending on your size. So I love that you brought that out. Okay, here we go, Zach. Every one of my guests play a little something on my show called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 questions. First thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
Yes.
Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Oh my gosh.
He's going to get himself in trouble. I can tell when you
I'm going to say my dad.
Dad, if you're listening.
Oh, he's not. He's retired and he's happy.
No, I'm going to clip this and send it over and be like, okay, at the 26-minute mark, listen to what your son said about you. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. He got his wisdom teeth removed, actually, was what happened. And there was something that needed to be cleaned out effectively afterwards. And it was a room clear for sure.
Poor Dad.
He's good to go now. They got it fixed.
He's good. Okay, good. I figured you had that handled. You might know a dentist or two that could fix it. All right. Question number 2. If you could go back. Oh, no. Sorry. Question number 2. I got that wrong. See, you threw me by talking about your dad. Now I have empathy to your dad. We're talking about empathy. If you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
I wish it was a little wider, actually. That's the one thing I would like. I don't know if I can change that, but if it was a little bit wider, a little fuller, I would love that.
My friend, I have no idea why this just flashed into my mind. I don't know why, but Joker. You played Joker from Batman with and one day said, why are you so serious? I have no idea why that just came to mind. I mean, my mind is not in a good place right now, right? With the makeup.
I would go Grinch. You know, the Grinch has this coy little smile that builds all the way up his face. Like that's
all right. So we've got the Grinch and we've got Heath Ledger with the Joker from Batman. All right. So you went to a more fun place. It depends. Like, did you go like the Grinch, like the live action, or did you think Grinch like from like the 30-minute cartoon one?
Oh, the original.
Where's your mind? Yeah. Everybody retarded. All right, good. It is like you got to go with the OG, right? Like I'm a Gene Wilder when it comes to like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like no shade thrown on Johnny Depp, but I'm just saying. Okay, got it. All right, back to the original program. Question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own if you have one, which one would you choose and why?
Any dental product. I think the Pearl AI stuff is so fascinating for what they're doing right now, and the detection stuff they're able to do. I've experienced firsthand in my own dental practice that I go to, and just that ability to not only assist from a clinical standpoint, but the trust building it does to be able to demonstrate like, here's what it is, and here's what the program is telling us it is, and here's what my clinical perspective is to go along with that. Boy, does that do a lot for me as a patient to feel a lot of trust about what kind of decisions and the recommendations that are coming my way. So I think that's just genius stuff that's being built there, and cheers to that team for what they're doing.
I mean, detecting undiagnosed, right, helping with insurance claims. I mean, the co-founders over there, Kyle Stanley was on my program a little while ago, and the work that he's doing in wellness for dental is amazing. Ophir Tans I consider him a good friend of mine. I mean, just incredible what's going on with AI, but especially with Pearl. Thank you for lifting that up. That's amazing. I love that. Absolutely. We try to keep this to 30 minutes or less. I think we're going to go a few minutes over, but nonetheless, in the last few minutes, my friend, Zach from Wonderful Finance, is there anything I haven't asked you or just something you're dying to get off your chest to share with my listening audience in the last few minutes?
Um, I think just in terms of, where people are looking at for, what financing looks like for them, there's constantly changing regulatory environments. I think that the state of Illinois just passed a new piece of legislation that went into effect at the beginning of this year. We may see some of the ramifications of what that means for what takes place for them inside the practices. Them knowing that they have partners in the space that are thinking about these problems to help them have the best types of outcomes possible so they can do what they really care about doing, which is helping more patients reach their outcomes, I think is important for them to understand. This can feel like a very, you know, the finance companies, the banks seem like the bad guys that are along the way, because one, there's this merchant fee things that goes into it, and all these other components. But there's everybody that's in this mix is trying to figure out the best way to meet the same type of objective. So the more people that you can talk to, be proactive about this, especially if it's something that's endemic to the success of your practice, which financing is for many groups out there. Lean on the networks of folks that are out there. There's great players in this space. This industry is very close. I felt welcomed very quickly within the first year and a half that I've been here to find that everybody really is just trying to lift each other up so that we can ultimately do the same thing, which is, help a huge portion of our population in the United States that needs this kind of support.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just new legislation coming out, and there are individuals and groups like Zach Anderson at Wonderful Finance. Thank you so much, as the head of partnerships, for coming on the Two Sleuth podcast and sharing all of your knowledge. If they want to reach out to you, Zach, how can they find you?
They can shoot an email over to our website, hello@wonderfulfinance.com. They can find our company website at wonderfulfinance.com. We're on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, what have you. I'm always happy to have a conversation with anybody about what's going on. And where we either might can be able to provide some help or provide some guidance on some areas where we can support them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast. It has been very educational and also a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Zach.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
If you need help with converting lead calls into consultations, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to G&A Consult for a discovery call today.